Hello, this is a demo video of DevTools for Nimbly framework. So it's called Gnimbly, like graphical Nimbly, and yeah, we'll just run through it through a few examples. This is just a quick start. So you started in the CLI, and then you go to port 4002, and now you see some different projects, right? So let's say that we want to create a new project, and it should be on path. So currently you need to specify the path, but let's specify this one. Like this, and then I'll just use the name. Later on, of course, this will be a file folder picker or something, but yeah, currently just like this. So yeah, we create a project is created. You can see that in here we have project.json and ports mapping. So this is just utility structures for the tool to work correctly. And yeah, you have this view, which is kind of like a diagram. And in here you can create microservices. So let's create an example microservice, which is like auth service. Let's have it. Must be an identifier. Okay, it has a validation. And let's say it's in TypeScript. Right. Okay. So while we're creating the microservice, we can of course also create some additional services like controllers. So this could be like auth. So if I hit save, it's going to be created, and then I hit save, and it's going to generate a project within my sub project. Actually, this is a microservice in my demo, which is TypeScript project. This is important, and it has all dependencies. So currently it's installing the dependencies. You can see that that's done. It has some commands, right, for running, and everything is set up. Basically it should run on port 3000 when we started, and if it's available. If not, it's going to pick a different one. Everything that we've specified is created here. We have an empty controller, no types at the moment. So yeah, we can move on to services, and let's say auth controller has a base path auth, right, and we can create a new route, which is like login, for example. This can be like, and now we are specifying the function within this controller, which is like login function. It returns any for now, okay, and we can add a parameter, which is like a body parameter, which is credentials, right, and let it be any for now, okay, and let's save, and let's just hit save, okay. So this will add that function. We have no type at the moment, so for anything. So let's just go to microservices. Let's go to models, and here we can add a class, which is credentials. We can add a new attribute, which is like username, string. We can also add a new attribute, which could be like a password, also a string. So we hit save. This is created. We go to auth service in this tab, and now we can edit this. We can say it returns credentials, and it takes in credentials. I hit save, and it should generate it now. So now you can see that this got generated. Auth controller takes in credentials through body, and it returns credentials with promise with credentials, and we also have credentials type created here. Right, that's great. But how do I test this? So there is something that is called watch mode, which basically starts the services, and now you can see their documentation. So if you open this, you can see that this service is actually running, and you can play around with it. The problem is, okay, now I made a mistake. This is a get. This should be post, because it's taking the body. Let's just change it to post. All right, save, let generate, and you'll see that this also is refreshing automatically. So if I try this out and execute, it will return null. Why is it returning null? Because I didn't add any code to this. So let's say return credentials, right? Sorry. Okay, if I save, it's gonna refresh. If I go here and back here, this is going to refresh. And if I try, actually I could have just executed because it's just the same request. You see also in schema, credentials are created, and if I hit execute, it's gonna return this what I've passed actually. So if I pass in my name, this is going to be returned. All right. But then, okay, so I specified my code, which is very simple, right? So let's add something more, like if credentials.username, if it's not admin, then I'll throw an error, for example. Okay, so if I go like this and I execute, it's throwing the error, right? Okay, if I add admin, okay, it's working. Cool. So what if, okay, I have some custom code written here, and usually with generators or tools that generate your code, it's hard to handle user-defined code. So you usually, they usually rely on mechanisms like template methods or extending this and whatnot, but what we've done is we capture this as is, and if you change the interface of the function or its parameters, types, and whatnot, this would still remain the same. So let me add one more parameter to this function, which could be like remember me, which is in query, and it's a boolean. I just hit save, and you'll see that my code remained the same, but now I have remember me here. And if I change my code like this, and then I return remember me as well, just to avoid some TypeScript stuff. And okay, if I go to docs, it should still work, right? So if I select true here, I go admin, yeah, okay, it works. Yeah, this is a string that is fixed with a plugin, but yeah, that mapping should be handled. So yeah, you can also add some local services. So it doesn't have to be a controller. You can specify like user service, right? And that's a local service. So it doesn't have a base path. It just has a function. So let's say check if user exists, and I go in like, okay, check if, okay, that's taking credentials. Actually it should return a boolean, right? But it should take in credentials. So credentials, right? Okay, I hit save. So this is now a local service. As you see, it doesn't have any HTTP configuration, and let's say that this auth controller depends on this service, so it's using this service, right? So we have this connection. Cool. I hit save, and this should now be generated. So user service is generated. We have a boilerplate here for checking if user exists, and auth controller, you can see that this has been connected. So auth controller can now use the user service. So okay, let's see. Instead of checking username not equal admin, let's call, like, let's go await this dot user service dot check if user exists credentials dot username. Okay, so we'll also check if it's admin. Okay, this takes the whole credentials object. Okay, and it should return promise boolean. Okay, so if let's go like return creds username equal admin. So we have the same logic, right? We go back, we go to documentation here in Swagger, and we go string. Okay, this should throw an error. Yes, invalid credentials. If I go admin here, this should now work. Okay, something is crashing. Let's see. So yeah, the error is check if user exists. This we should negate this. So if not user exists, then it should throw an error, right? So if we just execute this, now it works. Okay, cool. So that's another option. Your services not only get injected automatically, but your code for setting that to a private property of the controller also gets generated. So you can just straight off jump into writing your business logic here, right? Or your custom code. Okay, cool. What are other options? So we can create a service that accesses an external API that is called an API integration service. So that is like cat fact service, which is like API integration. So the host, I forgot this, cat fact. Okay, so the host is cat fact ninja. All right. And the base path, let's go like this, and then let's go like fact and like cat fact about cats. Okay, let's leave it as any. Yeah, now this is an API integration service. Okay, cool. Let's say user service uses this, and we go save. So in user service, we have that cat fact service here, and you'll notice if you watched Nimbly tutorial or demo, this is injected as a proxy, so it's actually a remote service that gets, so the calls to this get converted to an HTTP request. And yeah, we can just do like console log await this dot cat fact service dot get fact about cats. All right, and yeah, so whenever we call this check if user exists, which is actually on that login call, we would see the log. Let's try it. So if I run this, okay, you see that it was loading because it was awaiting, and in here we can see that the fact about the cats got logged. All right, next thing would be like if we had two microservices. So let's say this is like microservice 2. All right, and it would have a service or a controller which is like, right, okay, I go save. Maybe I'll create a route which is test, and the new route would be, okay, let's just add test, get test. It returns any, we don't care at this point, we've already showed that. This is like tests, let's like this. Okay, save. So yeah, if I hit save, now this is going to generate a new microservice, which is microservice 2. Same as this one, it's gonna have a test controller, and this is just gonna return any. So let's go like return. Okay, something like this. Cool. And now if I turn on and off watch mode, just to make sure that they are both running, if I go back to microservices, go to docs, if I use this, it should return test. Okay, cool, that works. But let's say, what if this auth service depends on this second microservice? So we can create a connection between them, and that connection, let's say this is like using test controller, right? And I hit save. So if I go to auth services, now I have access to this remote proxy, which is test controller. Okay, and I just connect these like this, and let's say user service is going to use something from microservice 2, which is another service, and yeah, this basically would get injected. So if I save, I go back to user service, we now see that we can use the test controller, and we can do the same as cat fact service, which is this. And if we go to auth service and we try to use the endpoint, we just run it. Okay, we can see that it logged test, and then later on it logged the cat fact. Cool. So that works. Finally, what we could showcase is a plugin system, which is the same as Nimbly plugin system, but this is just a UI for installing that. So if we go and search for a plugin, let's say Nimbly plugins, okay, and we find Nimbly Zod validation. It loads some information about the plugin. You can pick the version as well, and we can just go and install. So after installing the plugin, we have to hit the save button, which will just install that plugin. So you can see that it is calling Nimbly Zod validation plugin. It's importing it from there, and it's installed here. So now that plugin is enabled and works for this service. We've already showcased that plugin in Nimbly tutorial. Something interesting as well, if the plugin is used for injecting some services or working with some third-party stuff, like Redis, for example, Nimbly Redis, Nimbly Redis plugin, okay. If we install that one and we hit save, you can see that there is also a message. In the diagram, it's visible which plugins or what kind of infrastructure this microservice is using. In this case, it's Redis. This is specified in the plugin itself, all the image, all the metadata about this diagram, and that which gets injected here in this view. So if we go back, you can see that both Zod validation and Redis plugin are installed. Maybe a few mentions about how we handle user-defined code is we have a parser which is smart enough to recognize sections of JavaScript code and to remember those sections. For us, the important section that we are remembering or searching for is, okay, within the class, we are looking for methods and basically method bodies. And for your existing functions, method bodies remain the same. Now the question is, what if we rename this function, for example? Okay, that's a good question. Or let's say not controller, we rename this function, right? So basically a new function would be created with an empty body, and then you would have to resolve it. But as long as you're making changes to an existing function, your body remains untouched. So this is kept. So this was harder for us to implement, but it's easier for the user because with zero effort, you can change the interface of the function, and your code would stay the same. If you would change this, remember me, yes, the code would be red. This wouldn't compile, but you would have to come back and fix it, which is an easy fix, and that's an edge case. If you're renaming something, usually you would be adding, or okay, yes, if you're renaming, then you just come here and rename. So yeah, that would be all from Gnimbly. There is a lot more things to be done here. This is just a prototype. It's fairly unstable for now as well. But in future, one of the things that we will aim for is when you make changes, so that the communication between this tool, these DevTools, UI tools, and the code is bidirectional. So when you make changes in the code, for example, I add a path parameter here, called test, whatever, this would get reflected on the diagram as well. So if you go to auth service, services, and then like controller, and then you look at login, you would see that parameter added and whatnot. Also, I forgot to mention, after we installed that Redis plugin, which is registering its service, that service is now available to be used for our other either controllers or local services. Yeah, that would be all. Thank you for watching, and I'm looking forward to your thoughts. See ya. Bye.